G'day. It's Nick here and welcome to Wicked Wildlife, and today we are in Townsville at Billabong Sanctuary, my old stomping ground, with Hope, who is a southern cassowary. And in this video we're going to share with you 10 cool cassowary facts that I think you guys didn't know. Stick around. Number 1, there's actually 3 species of cassowary. Now we've only got one here in Australia. Hope here is what we call a southern cassowary. These guys are found on the coast of Queensland and also southern parts of Papua New Guinea. Up in Papua New Guinea, you've got the northern cassowary and the dwarf cassowary. So they're the 3 species of cassowary we've got around the world today. If you go back further in time, there was the 4th species, the pygmy cassowary, which found as far south as central New South Wales. It's been extinct for a long time, so today Australia's only got the 1 species, but globally, there's 3 species of cassowary. Fact number 2, the cassowary is the 3rd heaviest bird in the world today. The first 2 are 2 different species of ostriches. You've got the common ostrich and the Somali ostrich. So these guys rank in number 3 in terms of weight. They are a smidge shorter than the emu, but in weight, they're the heaviest bird in Australia, heaviest bird in all of Asia, and the 3rd heaviest bird in the world, with maximum weights of just shy of 80 kilos, but the vast majority being a bit lighter than that. But nonetheless, 3rd heaviest bird in the world. Number 3, cassowaries are considered by most people to be the most dangerous bird on the planet, and they have caused 2 human fatalities. The first one was in the early to mid 1900s and was actually a 16-year-old boy here in North Queensland. Basically what was happening though was these 2 boys were attacking cassowaries, and one of them ran for it. The cassowary followed him, kicked him, and it ended up kicking him in the neck. So that was the first death from a cassowary. The second one happened fairly recently, in the 2000s, and that was in America, of all places. A man living in Florida who was keeping cassowaries, same thing, was kicked, fatally injured, and as a result we have 2 deaths on the record from cassowaries. Now, of course, the vast majority of negative interactions or attacks between humans and cassowaries aren't going to result in fatality or a serious injury at all. But a study in 2003 looking into 150 of these attacks found that about 75% of all these cassowary attacks were the result of cassowaries who were so used to being fed they were expecting food and basically over-humanized with people, grumpy that they weren't getting food, things like this. A small percentage involved cassowaries defending their chicks, a slightly larger percentage involved cassowaries physically being attacked by people or dogs, but basically the vast majority were overfed, humanized cassowaries that had lost their fear of people, lost their natural respect. So the moral is, we shouldn't be feeding wildlife. It's a great thing to want to help wildlife. There's lots of ways to do it, but feeding wildlife never ends up well for the wildlife. Not just cassowaries, we do it with crocodiles, the crocodile starts hanging around. Down home we do it with seals and people say we've got to get rid of that seal. Lots of ways to help wildlife. Feeding them is not the best way to do it. But number 3, cassowaries are considered the most dangerous bird in the world by many people. Number 4, it's actually believed now that cassowaries and all their relatives, the ratites, came from ancestors that could fly. Now this is a fairly new idea. You see, up until recently we thought that because there's these flightless birds all around the world, that they must have walked when the continents were locked up. Continents broke away and they evolved in their own forms of ratites. But genetic evidence shows that some of the ratites are actually closer related to birds that fly today than they are to one another, which is an indicator for some people that even though this guy is one hell of a turkey, these guys might have come from a flying ancestor and they lost their flight independently of one another because the niche of giant flightless bird works so well in so many different ecosystems. So there you go, number 4, cassowaries came from potentially a flying ancestor. Number 5, cassowaries are fairly unique compared to a lot of other animals in that the females are both larger and brighter in colour than their male counterparts. Now, with the vast majority of animals, you think of males as being larger because they're fighting with one another to get the female's attention, or brighter in colour because they've got to attract a mate somehow, like a peacock or something like that. But in the case of cassowaries, females are bigger and brighter in colour. Males go from between 35 to 45 kilos or so. Females average something like 58 kilos and have been recorded at a smidge under 80 kilograms in weight. So not a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger. So when it comes to cassowaries, the girls certainly rule the roost. Number 6, when it comes to cassowary families, it's actually males who do all the parenting. Now they share this in common with their closest cousin, the emu, in that the father does all the incubating of eggs and raising of chicks. You see, cassowaries in the wild are basically solitary. They live separately from one another, and they only seek each other out come mating time. Now this is from like May to October-ish. Basically the male will build a nest, females will come along, she'll lay 3 to 5 eggs in those nests, and then she will disappear, and she might lay her eggs in several males' nests throughout the season. The male cassowary, he's going to spend the next 60 days or so sitting on those eggs. He doesn't get up much, he doesn't drink, he doesn't eat, he sits on those eggs until those babies hatch. And they follow him for the next 9 months before they become independent, wander off into the bush, and he builds a new nest waiting for a female cassowary like Hope to come again and repeat it all over again. So cassowaries are pretty good dads. The dads do all the parenting, the mums have it pretty easy in this case. Number 7, this giant cask on Hope's head here is actually still a bit of a mystery. There's a few different theories about what it could do. Some people believe because of the honeycomb structure inside that it might aid in detecting the sounds that these guys make. Imagine this is a big animal, lives in a very dense environment. They can't see one another very well. They make a deep booming sound. And the theory is that cask might help pick it up. Another theory is because it grows throughout their entire lives, it could be a symbol of, dominance or their hierarchy, because older, bigger, stronger cassowaries might have a bigger cask. Yet again, other people think it might work to help break through the brush as these guys stampede through the rainforest. At the end of the day, they're all theories. We don't know. If one of you guys watching out there does well in school, do a PhD on cassowaries and let me know in 10 years' time, because their cask is still a really cool mystery. Number 8, cassowaries are what we call a keystone species. Now, basically what this means is they're an animal that is crucial to the maintenance of the survival of an ecosystem, not just, a small thing like a burrow, the entire ecosystem. And cassowaries do this because, as you can see with Hope here, these guys live almost entirely off fruit. But they've got a very short digestive system, which means what comes out the other end of a cassowary often has a lot of seeds in it. Now, because of this, these guys are actually important seed dispersers. It's actually figured out that these guys are an important part of the seed dispersal of 230 different native rainforest plants, and there's at least 100 rainforest plants that are entirely dependent on cassowaries for seed dispersal. Either they need to go through a cassowary, or their seeds are so big that things like fruit bats can't move them around, but they're entirely dependent on cassowaries to disperse their seeds. No cassowaries, no things like cassowary plums growing in the rainforest. Now, the reason seed dispersal is so important is basically it means that the baby trees grow up in a different part of the forest to their parent trees. So it means that rather than we having a patch of cassowary plums and a catch of burdekin plums and some gum trees over there, we've got trees interspersed throughout the forest. It also means that because those plants are growing up further away from their parents, I suppose, there is more genetic diversity amongst the species. So because of this, cassowaries literally are an important part for the rainforests here in Australia to survive. Without cassowaries, we lose as many as 100 and potentially 200 plus species of rainforest plants. Number 9, cassowaries have actually been recorded eating their own poo. Now, this in some ways ties back down to number 8. You see, because these guys have a short digestive system, seeds and everything come out the other end, that often what comes out the other end of a cassowary is still fairly nutritious. There's still bits of fruit in there, seeds and things like this that the cassowary often re-ingests, so they eat their own poo. On top of that, they'll even pick through the poo of other cassowaries. This is called coprophagia, when an animal ingests its own droppings, basically. And it means that it does 2 laps of their digestive system, gets every last little bit of nutrients out of that, and I don't know, maybe spreads those seeds even further again. But yeah, cassowaries eat their own poo. And lastly, number 10. Cassowaries here in Australia are considered endangered. Now, throughout their entire range, they're actually classed as least concern, but this is largely due to a lack of data in Papua New Guinea. It's estimated there could be between 10 and 1,000 cassowaries throughout their entire range, southern cassowaries that is. But here in Australia, we have between 1,500 and 2,500. So here in Australia, they are an endangered species. Some of the risks or threats that they face here in Australia are things like habitat loss. We've cut down an awful lot of rainforest here in Australia, but even the rainforest that's left, it's got roads going through it, so a lot of these guys are hit by cars, they're attacked by dogs, and unfortunately they're lured to these places, things like beaches, roads, suburbs, because people feed them. So through all these things, cars, dog attacks, habitat loss, unfortunately, despite the fact that these guys have been here for millions and millions of years, cassowaries here in Australia are considered an endangered species. So there you have it, guys. That's 10 cool facts that I think that most of you guys wouldn't have known about cassowaries, particularly the southern cassowary, the Australian cassowary. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you think I've missed anything or if you think there is a cool fact that should have been in there. But other than that, guys, before I leave, I do want to shout out Billabong Sanctuary who've let us come and film with these guys. If you are in North Queensland, come and visit them. And if you're not in North Queensland, come here anyway and visit them. It's a cool place, lots of cool animals. Lastly, if you did enjoy the video, there is a few cool things you can do to help cassowaries. If you do visit the place, make sure you don't feed our cassowaries. If you live here, keep your dogs controlled, things like that. Make sure you conserve rainforest ecosystems where you can, either personally or through foundations, but lots of ways we can make sure these guys survive well into the future. So yeah, other than that, like the channel, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Check them back next week. Have a good one and take care.